Let's talk about this NXT Vengeance Day show. Last night, NXT held its Vengeance Day event on the road in Charlotte, North Carolina. They had around 5,000 people in the building, and this is what they need more of. They need to get out of the Performance Center for these big shows. I can understand shooting the weekly television from the PC, but these major shows cannot be held at the PC anymore. Last night was a good example of why that is. They had a good crowd last night. It just gives it a bigger feel, right? The reason that they went off the road and they stopped doing the big shows on the road was because of COVID. Well, now everything is back to normal as far as WWE live events and AEW live events, and there is no reason that NXT cannot at least take a handful of these big shows that they do every year and get back out on the road. They've now had a couple of years to reestablish the roster, right? Establish some of the newer talent. I can understand it first. You had a lot of people on the show. People didn't know who they were, and how are you going to sell tickets for something like that? But now they have built up enough of these people, and they have a few main roster people helping out. There's no reason for them not to be on the road going forward for these big shows. And they had last night a black and gold. That opening match had a black and gold takeover feel to it. And that was it. I can't say that about the rest of the show. The rest of the show was good. It was not great. It was good. I have seen better, even from this new version of NXT, I have seen better. Wesley and Donovan Dijak, they tore the house down in that opening match. They had the type of match that Jim Cornette used to hate in Ring of Honor and got them to stop doing when he joined the company. And he wasn't wrong. In that, guys would go out there in the very first match on those ROH shows thinking that they were in the main event. And they would not leave anything for the people who came later on with all the big moves and false finish after false finish after false finish. You know, there were 3 or 4 times here where I thought the match should have been over. That would be my main critique, that they went overboard with the near falls. Lee hit him with I'll give you an example. Lee hit him with a spiral tap at one point. And they shot it really well too. They got this like kind of overhead view of the move as he was soaring through the air, which I thought was kind of cool. Overhead, but like from the side. But he hits the spiral tap, and Dijak kicked out. But then a handspring Pele kick is what beat him in the end. That kind of stuff just bugs the shit out of me. But even still, these two had the match of the night. I mean, it wasn't even close. These two had the match of the night. Vic Joseph did not call a single move in the last 3 or 4 minutes of the match. For all the shit that they were doing, not one move was called. It was all boom, oh, that's all we got. He didn't mention Tony D'Angelo by name either when he came out with Stacks to take the bullet for Wesley on the floor. They took the brunt of the moonsault by Dijak and basically saved the North American title for Wesley. So the Dijak-D'Angelo feud looks to continue. I don't know why they would have done that unless, again, we're talking kayfabe-wise now. Why would D'Angelo and Stacks have stood in the way of the moonsault unless it was strictly to get revenge on Dijak for what Dijak did to Stacks and prevent him from winning the title? But here's my question: then why not just beat him up and get Wesley disqualified? So that way the title doesn't change hands. Right? You still get the same result, but without taking a moonsault from a fucking 6'7" man. So I thought that was pretty dumb. So, yeah, looking ahead, maybe we get a triple threat match at Stand and Deliver for the North American title. Wesley is great. Wesley is great. He has found his footing after losing his tag team partner. And it's also great to finally see Dijak back to his old self after being buried in the muck for the past 2.5 years. That's 2.5 years of his career that he can never get back. What was not great to see was his middle finger, which was bent sideways when the match was over. Somehow, the finger was not broken. According to Shawn Michaels on the post-show media call, they took an x-ray, and I guess it was just displaced. So they had to numb his hand, and they were going to set it back in place. It's like watching that Rey Fenix injury on Dynamite last year when he landed on the floor on his arm. And everybody was certain that he had snapped his arm in half, and yet the arm wasn't broken. I can't believe the finger wasn't broken. It looked ridiculously nasty, but I guess it could have been worse. Fallon Henley and Kiana James. They ended the 186-day reign of Katana Chance and Kaden Carter as the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. That is the longest women's tag team title reign, NXT or main roster, since they revived the women's tag titles with Sasha Banks and Bayley. And I have said this before, Chance and Carter, they have become a great tag team. And I think after this run, they are now main roster ready. They've been down there for a very long time. Henley got the pin, but did not see James outside the ring holding down Kaden Carter's legs to give them the tainted victory. James had been working as a heel. If you've been following these storylines, and I know a lot of people at this point don't, but if you've been following the storyline, Kiana James had been working as a heel, and basically still is, until we got to this whole unlikely pairing between these two. Henley has been a babyface with Briggs and Jensen, so it makes sense that she would use heel tactics to win because that's what she is. She never stopped being a heel. She's a heel who's going to win at all costs. The question now is what happens when Henley finds out? Does it cause problems between them again? Or does she come around to the same tactics? Kiana James has also been playing Jensen like a fiddle. She's got him wrapped around her finger, so I imagine that things are not going to end well for the baby faces here. I've compared this story to what WWE did with Sunny and the Smoking Guns back in '96. The way Sunny had Billy Gunn wrapped around her finger and it led to the breakup of their team. To be fair to Billy, Sunny had all of us wrapped around her finger back then. I would have loved to have been wrapped around any part of Sunny back then. And today I'm more worried about her wrapping her car around a tree and who she might hurt. Carmelo Hayes beat Apollo Crews 2 straight falls in their 2 out of 3 falls match, which was a surprise. Credit to Apollo. Coming from the main roster, he's been very giving. Putting over Bron Breakker, putting over Carmelo Hayes in 2 straight falls. This was the match I was expecting to be the show stealer. And it was very good, but it felt a little off to me. I don't know why. I don't know exactly what it was, but what we got was still very good. This was not the match of the night, but it was still very good. Trick Williams, late in the match, he exposed one of the turnbuckles, and whatever his master plan was, it backfired, and Crews shot Mello into the exposed buckle. Trick went to go use a steel chair when who should show up but Commander Aziz. Only it was not Commander Aziz. He's back to being Daba Kato from the Raw Underground days. And he took care of Trick. But in the ring, Hayes recovered. He hit his leaping leg slice off the top rope for the win. And I see here, for some reason, I wrote leaking leg slice in my notes. If you've got a leaky leg, you should definitely have a doctor look at that. Frankly, if any part of your body starts leaking, or your car, I would be concerned. So Daba Kato did not do much to help Apollo Crews, but he did get in the ring after. He helped him to his feet. And then he turned on him. And he gave him the old D'Lo Brown sky high onto a chair. These two obviously have history together from when Apollo was doing his gimmick and he was the Intercontinental Champion. We have not seen Daba Kato. As whatever incarnation you want to call it, we have not seen him since Apollo went back to NXT. As giving as he has been putting people over, and it hasn't hurt him yet, he won't have much value left if they just keep on beating Apollo Crews. So I think he needs to win when these two eventually meet. And for Carmelo, it's like I've been saying for months, they need to do Bron Breakker against Carmelo Hayes before Breakker gets called up to the main roster, which I think is happening as soon as the Monday or Friday after WrestleMania. I think Bron Breakker is going to show up on TV. As I predicted, Gallus, they are now the new NXT Tag Team Champions, beating The New Day, Pretty Deadly, and Chase University in the Fatal 4-Way match. This always felt like the New Day swan song in NXT to me. That Shawn Michaels wanted them to help move tickets for their first big show back on the road, and then drop the titles, either here or at Stand and Deliver. They chose this show. Chase U, they never win anything. So I never considered them for the win. And they were very popular with the crowd. They've gotten over, but they never win anything. So I wasn't expecting them to win. Pretty Deadly have been tag team champions before. And they had a look on the main roster recently in some dark matches, and they were said to have gotten high marks. So they may not want to put the belts back on them right now if they think there's a chance that they might get called up soon. Gallus can be a force if they're pushed like one, so I think they were the right choice. I think they stand to gain the most from the win here, and what I liked about this, they pinned the New Day. I liked that. It would have been very easy for them to lose the titles without being pinned. They're a major act on the main roster, right? Kofi Kingston, former WWE champion. But they had New Day. They had Xavier take the losing pin to give Gallus the decisive win. I like that. Roxanne Perez retained her NXT Women's Championship over Gigi Dolan and JC Jane. Toxic attraction. They ended up at each other's throats, as you knew they would. Perez was basically fighting a handicap match most of the way up to that point. I wasn't really impressed here by Gigi and JC, I just have to say. This was not I didn't think was their best showing. I did laugh, though. At one point, we got dueling chants from the crowd for Roxanne and for Gigi. I just thought, poor JC. Poor JC has never felt lower than she did in that moment. Finally, when the two of them got back briefly on the same page, they set up a table on the floor. She was fighting on the ropes. JC was. With Roxanne. Gigi then climbed up on the apron to try to get in on the action. And she got booted off the apron. And she went through the table on the floor. And Roxanne, again, they're still on the top, Roxanne and JC. Roxanne hit a top rope pop rocks. Top rope code red for the win. There's no obvious challenger lined up for Roxanne for stand and deliver. I still say it should be Tiffany Stratton who takes the title from her. Do they do it at stand and deliver? I mean, that depends on whether or not they think she's ready for that spot. She was certainly on the way. Before she got hurt in that match over the summer with Wendy Chu, Tiffany Stratton was well on her way. I mean, by now she would have had even more months of ring work and experience. I don't know if, because of the time away, if they want to take their time with her. Because, I don't see any other obvious challenger for Roxanne. So Tiffany Stratton would be my choice for that spot. And Bron Breakker is still your NXT champion, beating Grayson Waller inside a steel cage. They took away the escape the cage rule, which cut down on all the climbing out spots. It was pinfall or submission only. This just did not feel like a Big Show main event. Pretty standard cage match. The big spot was Waller climbing to the top. He was teasing a big move until Bron grabbed a hold of him. And while standing on the ropes, he superplexed Waller off the top of the cage, which is a spot that we've seen many times before. Hogan and Bossman did it. Brett and those rings were much harder, though. They were crazy for taking those bumps on those rings back then. Breakker hit the ropes. He speared Waller for the win to retain the title. Grayson Waller gets good heat. I look at Grayson Waller and I just look at him as a more athletic Miz. That's what I see when I see Grayson Waller. But this just wasn't a terribly interesting feud, nor was there any drama, because I don't think any people expected a title change here. Now, after the match, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, they walked out. They stared at Breakker as he posed on top of the cage. And there it is. There's your stand and deliver main event. The timing is right to take the title off of Bron Breakker for good. He's been ripping through the roster. I think people are growing a little bit tired of him. And you'll see the people are going to want to see Melo beat him for the title. As they build this match up for stand and deliver, you're going to see from the audience reactions. Even at the PC, I think what will end up happening here is, at the very least, it'll be 50-50. But I think people are going to gravitate towards Carmelo Hayes because they like him. They think he's cool and they think this is his moment. And part of it is that they're probably just tiring of Bron Breakker. So I think the timing is perfect. I think Bron's getting the call up after Mania. I expect a new champion April 1st in LA. I can see that's going to be another very long day with stand and deliver in the afternoon and then night one of WrestleMania right after. I saw something mentioned, I think Meltzer may have said something about Dragon Lee. On these big shows, traditionally, they used to have that one new guy they'd show in the crowd. Evidently, that person was going to be Dragon Lee, but he is dealing with some sort of visa issue. So he was not able to be there. And hopefully they get him back in time to have him at Stand and Deliver, because I think that would be the right place to debut him. I mean, they did that with Shinsuke Nakamura many years ago in Dallas. They debuted him against Sami Zayn on that show, and that was an incredible show, incredible match. I think they could do the same with Dragon Lee, assuming they get whatever this visa issue is cleared up in time. They have 2 months to make that happen. But during the post-show media call, Grayson Waller walked into the room and interrupted Shawn Michaels. He was ranting and raving like a lunatic. Matt Bloom had to come in and take him out of the room. Sean Ross Sapp then asked Shawn Michaels, what was that all about? And Michaels claimed that there was an incident coming back from Gorilla with him and Waller. And, Grayson, I like Grayson, but he's very much in real life, like what you see on camera. So they're doing some sort of angle with Grayson Waller. I don't think it's going to be Shawn Michaels getting in the ring to wrestle him, but they're doing some kind of angle with Grayson Waller. But there was also some news. Earlier in the day, Booker T announced that his reality of wrestling promotion will be working with NXT to, quote, bring our fans incredible matchups they cannot see anywhere else. And that they are bringing in Ivy Nile next Saturday for a show at the World Gym Arena in Texas City. Brian Alvarez then followed that with a tweet of his own claiming that NXT is going to allow talent to work select indies going forward, which would be a pretty big deal if that were true. The Reality of Wrestling account then responded to Alvarez and said, if said indie company is owned by Booker T. And indeed, on the media call, Shawn Michaels was asked about this, and he said as far as he knows, and he's, now he's Mr. NXT now, so I would certainly hope he'd be aware of this. As far as he knows, it's just a one-shot to help Booker's promotion, and it's nothing more than that. So, straight from HBK's mouth, the official response is that right now, there's nothing more to it than meets the eye. That's what they claim. It's just a one-shot. Ivy Nile is going to make an appearance for Booker T's promotion next weekend, and that's it. If this was to turn into something more, I think that would be cool. Sort of loaning out some of the NXT talents, farming them out, maybe some of the lesser utilized ones to work shots in other promotions. I see that for the talent, I see that as being a good thing. But the reality is, nobody knows what the future holds because according to Nick Khan, this company could be sold in the next 3 months. If they get sold, who the hell knows what the new owner's policy would be on stuff like this? They may open the whole thing up, or they may not want to work with anybody. That Uncle Saudi, he's a very unpredictable guy. There's no telling what he might do.